We welcome in 247 Sports national recruiting analyst Greg Biggins. Greg, thanks for taking time out to join us. First off, I wanted to get your insight into Aaron Butler, a four-star athlete from Calabasas, California, that committed to the Buffs in May. I know you've gotten a chance to see him in person quite a few times. What stood out about Aaron Butler when you watched him?
I would say a lot of things, but I think the thing that jumps out most is probably his compete level. And the guy plays angry, and I mean that as a compliment, right? He's got a major edge in his game, and you watch his highlight tape, and he's blocking as a receiver. I mean, he's putting guys on the ground, and then he'll talk to you a little bit. He's got some swagger to him, right? You think he's maybe from South Florida, not Calabasas, the way he plays defensively, early on, USC brought him in as a cover corner. So he's got that two-way ability, which we love, when it comes to rankings. And, we're big on multi-sport athleticism and then two-way snaps as a skill player, checks off both those boxes. So dynamic athlete. So let's start there. He's extremely explosive. I've been pushing him to kind of run track because, again, we're kind of big on those, those track measurables. And I think had he committed to it full time, I mean, he's a 10-6 guy. I truly believe he has that kind of speed. So he's the kind of guy you can throw a little hitch to, make two or three guys miss, and he's gone. He can stretch the field. He can get deep, pretty polished with those hands. Obviously his dad was an NFL guy, so he was kind of raised on football. So some of the little things he does really well, really natural in terms of being a, route runner. He's pretty precise with it, knows the game, very instinctive. So you kind of take some of the intangibles in terms of being brought up in a football family, the compete level, and the physical tools. There's a lot to like. I mean, he really four-star guy, top 50 player, and his upside is definitely a first, second round draft pick, I think.
You mentioned some of his rankings, and he's number 7 on the 247 Sports California rankings for 2024 right now. Are there any concerns with him, parts of his game that you'd like to see him kind of evolve as he gets ready to jump to the college level?
I don't think so. I would say concern would be too strong of a word. He's lean. He's got a kind of a smallish frame. I shouldn't say smallish frame. He's probably about 160, maybe 165. So you like to see him put on some good weight. But I think he has the frame to do so. He's probably about 5'11, maybe 5'11 and a half on a good day. So not a big, not one of those big 6'2", going old school, Colorado, Charles Johnson, Michael Westbrook, not those kind of, frames, but, he's going to be 195-ish, I think. So he's kind of more of a, and everybody likes player comps. I'm usually decent at them, but I'm drawing a blank, like Stephon Diggs type, right? He's kind of has that kind of frame and that kind of athleticism. So, and then again, I think it's a compliment, but, he plays with such an edge. Every game I've seen, he's gotten a personal foul for, knocking a guy on the ground late, hitting a guy after the whistle, stuff like that. Again, I think sometimes it's good to see that kind of an edge, but also I think you got to control it. Sometimes I think people know he's got that little bit of a temperament and they can take him out of his game by maybe talking to him a little bit. But again, I've always said, I'd rather have a guy who's like that and then try to rein in versus a guy who's got like no juice to them, right? He has no edge and try to make him have something. I think you're either a tough kid or you're not. And you can make someone maybe a little bit more edgy, but if you're not tough physically, mentally, it's hard to get there. And he's already there. So it kind of just rein that in a little bit, which again, it's much easier to do that than it is the other direction.
Aaron Butler's recruitment had a few twists and turns, Greg. He was a USC commit initially as a cornerback. Later, he falls in love with Georgia, then Oregon, and ultimately decides to commit to Colorado. How surprised were you with just how his recruitment turned out with him now being a commitment for the Buffaloes?
Like you said, it took a lot of twists and turns. He was very, very vocal. Most kids, everyone's kind of familiar with the crystal ball, which is, when we make a prediction, and I hate doing them, honestly. I don't do a whole lot of them. Just I feel like sometimes it, kind of steals the kid's thunder. So I don't do a whole lot. But he kind of reached out and said, "Hey, crystal ball me, I'm going to Georgia." Like he was the one who kind of encouraged me to do it. He visited a couple times, loved it, loved the receiver, wide receiver coaches, the wide receiver room, the quarterback room, felt like, hey, this is the place. He's, if you ever talked to him before, very confident kid. And he's like, I want to play on that SEC stage. Talked about, NFL scouts coming to watch Georgia practices every single day. You're competing against the best of the best. And this is how you kind of get yourself launched. So he was all in for Georgia. And then kind of, I'm not exactly sure what happened. They seemed like they both kind of, went separate ways. I think Georgia got a couple of kids and didn't have room, and he kind of felt like, you know what, I just gonna need to look elsewhere. And then it was Oregon. Again, he was adamant that, hey, Oregon was the move. He liked it there a lot. All the while, Colorado was always kind of in that background, and there were some insights there. His dad played with Deion before in the NFL. Really respected his dad. Really respected Deion as a man and as a coach. And they took a visit, and he told me prior to that unofficial visit, he goes, "Yeah, I kind of like Colorado. I'm just not sure about him though." And again, I think he was kind of thinking, big stage. Oregon with the NIL. Georgia with the SEC. And then he went there and he was blown away. This was the unofficial, just blown away. He said every single thing that they said just was really resonating with me. And so when he went back for his official visit, we started to hear some buzz that, hey, Colorado could be the move. And then again, the official visit, blew him away even more. He was there for the spring game. And, he was one of the first ones. I think Deion and CU kind of got a lot of flack for, running off guys. But I mean, Aaron was adamant. He goes, "Hey, this was the plan." He goes, all these guys knew ahead of time, and it was almost Deion allowing them to showcase themselves at the spring game. So it was almost kind of like Deion was doing them a favor. The players knew that, hey, this is probably my last time that I'm going to be wearing this uniform in that spring game. But rather than run them off early, it was, hey, go market yourself. Go play a spring game and go get yourself noticed. And that's kind of what happened. But Aaron was like, dude, there's guys in that sideline who I was seeing dudes, SEC dudes. I saw some JUCO dudes. I saw some guys that look like me that want to come in and compete. So he kind of kept saying, the way he was talking, it sounded like he was kind of like all in. And I was kind of starting to hear more and more buzz for Colorado. Unfortunately, he kind of blindsided me with the commitment. I still had my crystal ball in Oregon, which is again why I don't like to do them, because if you do one, you get stuck with it. And then so Aaron kind of surprised me a little bit when he did commit to Colorado, but there were signs kind of leading up to that. And, I know, speaking to him now, he's still, very happy and very confident in that decision.
He's a guy that could play on either side of the ball in college, but it sounds like his preference is on offensive receiver. Is that what you've gathered from your conversations with him?
100%. Yep. And that was a big reason why him and USC kind of parted ways. I mentioned he was a USC commit. But might have been the first commitment for Lincoln Riley as a corner. So, but he likes receiver, and that's he kind of was adamant and told schools, hey, don't recruit me unless you want me for a receiver. So, I actually think he has just a high end upside. I've always been more of a defensive guy. You go to a camp and you see the wide receiver line has 80 people and the corner line has 5, and you're going, dude, why go over here? Get your reps. So I've always been more of a defensive guy, but I do like him as a corner, but he loves receiver. And I think he's got all the tools to be, definitely a high round, high upside guy who should be able to make a lot of plays for the Buffs at the receiver position.
Colorado's new staff with Coach Prime has a lot of ties to the South, to Florida. So they're maybe not going to spend as much time recruiting California as they have with some of the recent coaching staffs in Boulder, but they did land Butler, and they signed 3 California prospects last recruiting cycle. In your experience talking with recruits and coaches, how have you seen the perception of CU football change since Coach Prime was hired at Boulder?
I mean, I can't even put it into words. And, you and I have talked, like it's radically different, right? Like it's insane just what it's like. Colorado now is, they can make a phone call to any kid in the country. It doesn't matter who it is. And that kid's going to answer the phone. And you're not surprised anymore, right? Originally, you're kind of wondering, okay, who's going to, give Colorado a hard look. Now you kind of saw some of the guys they signed last year. It's not surprising at all anymore when you see a player's going to visit Colorado. And, kind of some transparency. I grew up, big Bill McCartney guy. I love those Eric Bieniemy, Darren Hagen teams. I'm some of the California guy, but I don't know what it was. I just love the helmets and my favorite uniform. So I've always been kind of a closet, CU guy, and been to Boulder before. Actually applied to go to college there. I would say tuition fees were a little high for me, so I stayed local. But I've always felt like this is a gold mine, beautiful campus, probably a top 3 or 4 campus for me in terms of just the beauty of it. Love the downtown. And I've always felt like, gosh, When Neuheisel was there, they were able to recruit at a really high level, Rick Neuheisel, right? And I've always kind of thought, dude, what's the deal? I do feel like if Mel Tucker had stayed, he could have kind of got it rolling. You just kind of see what he's doing at Michigan State. But no, right now, I think it's the perfect situation where Deion has that name brand recognition. Kids love him. Everyone knows who he is, even though most of the kids now, they weren't really alive when he was the best corner in the NFL, but he's got that name brand recognition. Everyone knows him, loves him. He's got a staff that's high energy. And I've always thought, man, it's an easy sell to get kids to go to Colorado. Now, obviously, we don't know about conference. That's probably something that you know more about than I do, but I'm just saying there's a lot to sell, I think. And so long-winded way of saying, I think kids are extremely open. Originally, I wasn't sure what the feedback was going to be. They love it. And I think once you get kids on campus and you kind of see the whole setup and you see the tradition and the Wall of Fame, dude, I think they got a chance to win a lot of games. Maybe not this season. That's kind of, I think people are kind of wondering how many games they'll win this season, but I think there's definitely a future for the Colorado program with Deion there.
Greg, I've known you for a long time, dating back to when you were working for Student Sports and running the Nike camps. How long have you been involved with recruiting coverage now?
So my first year, kids are waking up. My first year was probably 95, 96. So I'm not very good in math. I think we're coming up on almost 30 years, right? In a couple of years. So yeah, it's been, when I first started, it was 900 phone numbers. So if you want to know about Colorado or Notre Dame or Texas, you'd call, this 900 number, $1.50 a minute, and you try to talk real slow, hard for me to do. And that's how you got your information. Now, obviously, recruiting has radically changed from 900 phone numbers and magazines back in the day to what we see now, where it's, everything's happening in real time, and internet and Twitter and social media have kind of taken over. So yeah, it's been a long time, Adam. I'm a dinosaur in the business right now.
What's one aspect of being a recruiting analyst that maybe the average fan on 247 Sports might not realize?
God, there's a lot. I mean, I would say just first off, I mean, I love it. I'm super blessed. Dude, God's good. But I would say just the work hours are insane. Literally, it sounds funny. My kids can attest, but you can't go to the bathroom without having your phone with you because you never know. Like, you literally have to be kind of like the Woj of high school football, and stuff is breaking all the time. And we talked off camera a little bit. June it's a wild time now with official visits being able to happen now, and 2 signing days. And so it's recruiting, and then we're not, people say, hey, when signing day's over, then you get a break, and you're like, no, now it's camp season. Now you're covering 7-on-7s and showcases and camps. And so I don't think people understand it. It is a great job, but I don't think people get just the work hours and how you're constantly on the road a lot, traveling, and you're watching kids. And if you're not watching them, you're at home talking to them. And if not, then you're writing stories about them. So, I mean, it's literally, sounds cliched 24/7, but you literally have to be ready to do something almost 24/7. And so between just the hours, the grind, it could be a little taxing at times, for sure.
Do you have a favorite recruiting story that you share often that kind of illustrates just how crazy or just how fun, recruiting coverage can get at times?
Yeah, no, you sent me that question. I don't have a favorite. I have a most miserable one for me. I think it's the most memorable. So I'll share that one, right? So again, I'm going to go old school, but I'll never forget this one. Is that running back from out here in Southern California named Lorenzo Booker, played at St. Bonaventure. And, so again, radical different times. This was before Twitter and even before cell phones weren't even a big deal back then. So he told me the night before that he was going to commit to Notre Dame. Right. So had my story pre-written, right? Notre Dame. Well, it was down to Florida State, Notre Dame, USC. When he told USC coach leaked it to the newspaper because USC was also recruiting another running back named Herschel Dennis, went to Long Beach Poly. And they wanted Dennis to see this so that they would see Lorenzo's going somewhere else. Hey, Herschel, we have a spot here for you. So I worked with the guy. He was actually a manager who said, hey, Lorenzo Booker's going to Notre Dame. Release your article now. Well, Lorenzo had a 3:00 press conference at his school. I go, dude, no, I promised the kid. I gave him my word. I wait until 3:00. He's like, dude, it's already in the newspaper. Put your article out. You got quotes? I go, not going to do it. So around 2:00, I go off to another press conference, a kid's going to announce his choice, right? Well, in the meantime, this manager logs into my computer and releases the story before Lorenzo actually puts it out. So that was number one, a big deal. What made it worse was Lorenzo, literally as he's walking from his seat to the podium, he changes his mind and picks Florida State.
Wow.
So not only did this guy release the story early, it's the wrong story because he changed his mind. And Lorenzo told me literally changed his mind as he's walking to the podium and said, "Hey, Florida State's my dream school. I got to pick the Noles." So, and again, I didn't have, this is no cell phones at this point in time. So I didn't know what happened. And then I got just crushed all over every message board back then for, releasing the story early, having the wrong story. And it was an experience that I'll never forget. And to this day, it's kind of been one of those deals where always make sure it's so much better to be right than be first, right? Everyone wants to be the first to break a story. And I get that. It's kind of how you get your name. But man, I'd rather be scooped than be wrong. Because when you're wrong, man, even if in this situation, it wasn't even really my fault, you can't walk it back. Once it's out there, you cannot walk it back. So that's probably the most memorable and miserable signing day experience for me in almost 30 years of doing this. I'll never forget it.
Wow. Well, Greg, you and Brandon Huffman and Steve Wiltfong, I mean, you guys are the best in the business, and you guys do it. It's really tough to do this job with character when everything is being broken on Twitter nowadays. But you guys find a way to continue to do this job without compromising your ethics. So all us team publishers really appreciate you. Before I let you go, one last question, Greg. Coach Prime, they're going to go heavy with transfer portal, even going ahead to this upcoming off season. It's going to continue to be a theme as they build up this roster. So they're not going to have a huge 2024 class in terms of size, but right now you look at their average rating, it's 89.56, which is number 2 in the Pac-12 behind Oregon. What would you suggest as a realistic expectation out there for Colorado fans with 2024 recruiting, just in terms of how they should rank in the Pac-12 and national?
Yeah, no, I think, why not? Let's have high expectations. Let's shoot for top 5. USC is going to be up there. Stanford is having a phenomenal class right now. I think they're top 10 nationally right now. And then Washington's doing well, but there's no reason why, Colorado, with the way I think of when I say top 5 in the conference, maybe top 25, top 30 nationally, I'm averaging in your transfer portal rankings. We actually do that, rank the transfer portals. And I do think that's a smart move for them to go heavy portal right now. You're getting guys that have experience, and you can see for yourself that these guys can play at that level. So expectation wise, shoot high. I would, at this point, I'm not going to underestimate, Deion. Travis Hunter, who's one of my all-time favorite players for a lot of reasons, not just football wise, but off the field, some stuff I've seen with him that I'll always be a fan. But why not go top 5 in the conference and top 25 to top 30 national, which, 5 years ago, gosh, right, you're hoping for a top 50 class. So going top 25, I think, is realistic, and it'd be a huge, huge win for that program.
Awesome, Greg. You're a busy man. I appreciate you for carving out a little time. I appreciate you. Colorado fans appreciate you. Thanks for coming on.
Oh, always. Thanks for having me, Adam.